Number 10. The Gong Farmer. Let's start things off with a real stinker. Back in medieval England, toilets weren't quite the high-tech porcelain thrones we have today. Instead, they were mostly holes in the ground, and someone had to clean them. Enter the Gong Farmer, a person whose entire existence revolved around scooping out human waste from cesspits. They had to work at night, because apparently society still had standards, just not for these poor souls. On the bright side, the job paid well. On the not so bright side, it also ruined your social life and probably your sense of smell forever. Number 9. The Sin Eater. Imagine being invited to every funeral, but instead of offering condolences, you're given a piece of bread that supposedly absorbed the sins of the deceased. Your job? Eat it. Yep, that's right. You get to consume people's spiritual baggage so their souls can move on, and in return, everyone treats you like the human equivalent of a garbage disposal. Not exactly a career path with great networking opportunities. Number 8. The Rat Catcher. The 14th century was an exciting time if you love plagues. With Black Death wiping out millions, rats were the ultimate public enemy. Someone had to deal with them, and that someone was the rat catcher. Armed with little more than a few traps and sheer determination, these folks had to crawl into infested homes, sewers, and dark alleyways, hoping they didn't catch the very disease they were trying to prevent. The worst part? Many kept live rats to help lure others, meaning their homes were basically tiny horror movies waiting to happen. Rat catchers in the 14th century often contracted diseases from the very rats they hunted, leading to severe illness and suffering. Their close contact with infested areas made them highly susceptible to the deadly plagues they aimed to prevent. Number 7. The Chimney Sweep. Childhood in the Industrial Revolution. If you were lucky enough to be born poor, you could get a head start on your career by being stuffed into narrow, soot-filled chimneys before you could even spell labor rights. These kids would climb up tight, dangerous spaces to scrape out soot, often inhaling toxic fumes, and in many cases, never making it out. Fun fact, it took until 1875 for this to be considered a bad idea. And let's not forget the delightful company of rats. These little critters didn't make the job any easier, adding an extra layer of peril to an already hazardous task. Number 6. The Leech Collector. Before modern medicine, people believed that draining your blood would somehow cure diseases. Enter the leech collector, whose job was to wade into filthy ponds and marshes, letting their own legs get covered in blood-sucking parasites, only to pluck them off and sell them to doctors. Not only did you have to endure the constant feeling of things sucking the life out of you, literally, but infection was a real concern. Imagine walking into work every day, knowing you were essentially a buffet. Number 5. The Executioner. Technically, this job came with great benefits. Job security? Check. High salary? Absolutely. Social acceptance? Not so much. Executioners were responsible for carrying out brutal punishments, from beheadings to drawing and quartering. While they were feared, they were also outcasts. Nobody wanted to shake hands with the guy who spent his days sharpening an axe for the next unlucky soul. Number 4. The Fuller. Want to know how people used to clean wool? Before modern detergents, people used urine, literally, and since someone had to stomp that urine into the fabric to clean it, fullers spent their days ankle deep in the worst smelling laundry imaginable. Oh, and there were no gloves or boots, just feet, pee, and endless regret. Number 3. The Resurrectionist. Back in the day, medical schools needed cadavers to study, but there was a shortage of legally obtained bodies. Enter the resurrectionists, professional grave robbers who dug up fresh corpses and sold them to doctors. Sure, it paid well, but there was always the risk of being caught by the authorities, or worse, angry family members, not to mention the psychological toll of spending your nights digging up the recently deceased. Number 2. The Toad Doctor. This was less of a doctor and more of a weird medieval belief in amphibian-based medicine. The idea: if you had an illness, a toad strapped to your body would cure it. The toad doctor's job was to collect these creatures, keep them alive, and convince people that tying a frog to their skin was a legitimate cure. Not the most scientific profession, but hey, at least you got paid for it. And finally, number 1, the whipping boy. Imagine getting punished for someone else's mistakes. Now imagine that someone is a spoiled prince who can do whatever he wants, knowing full well that if he messes up, you get the beating instead. Royal blood couldn't be touched, so they assigned a commoner kid to be punished in their place. The life of a whipping boy was far from enviable. These young boys, often educated and close in age to the prince, were always present during the prince's studies and activities. Whenever the young royal misbehaved or failed in his lessons, it was the whipping boy who got beaten. It's the definition of torture. So there you have it. The worst jobs in history, proving that no matter how bad your Monday is, at least you're not eating sins, drowning in filth, or being smacked around for royal entertainment. If you made it this far, hit that like button and subscribe for more horrifying historical facts. See you in the next one.